No, okay, just give me 1 second. No, life is very strange with the twists and turns. It is.
As every one of us sometimes learns, because that's a
Yeah.
poem, by the way.
But Joe, man, I think I really want to get into like the mindset of like a true leadership. Because I did read, like I did do some research, do some LinkedIn. I think um I really like psychology, to be
Me
honest with
too.
you.
Yep, me too.
I'm very big on it. I don't have a psychology degree.
Nor
Um,
do I.
but I did use it for trading. It was something that I had to take a lot of classes on. Um, I even went further, took some high level stuff. Most people don't take like human behavior,
Mhm.
behavior analysis, and stuff like that. Just to learn more, just how see how people run businesses, see how people make trades behind the scenes, see how people act. Um, See how when opportunity and pressure aligns, who what choices they make and why they make it. Um, and I looked at one of your posts. I looked at one of the things you said about leadership. One, you are your own best teacher. Two, accept responsibility, blame to no one. Three, you can learn anything you want to learn. And four, truly understand comes from reflecting on your own experience. I feel like I done a lot of those things naturally. I mean, I learned just growing up in the environment I grew up. I learned how to self correct myself when I realize something's not working. I don't know if you had those same experiences.
I did not. Nobody taught me, and I didn't have the self knowledge of understanding how psychology works. That you can become anything you want to become, and you become what you think about most of the time. If you think poverty, you're going to be in poverty most of your life. If you start thinking positive, you're going to be more positive. If you hang around negative people, you're going to get dragged down by negative people. So it's an environmental factor, who you hang around with and where you choose to go, but also it starts in your mind. And I started reprogramming my mind probably during college, but more so after I graduated, because I said there's got to be a way for me to succeed. I was going nowhere. I got out of college. My main thrust was to get a job. I've always worked. I started working when I was 7 years old, helped to put my way through school because I knew I had to get out of there. And I grew up in a bad neighborhood where people did not study. People were more concerned about being cool. And I fortunately had an influence of a mother who said, "You're going to college no matter what." There wasn't a choice. So, but I knew we couldn't afford it. My mother couldn't afford it, and there was no father in my house. So I started saving money from an early age and started applying for different grants, but also worked my way through college while I was going to college. And Kenny, I think what you referred to, I want to go back to something you said about the psychology of trading. We probably can't get into this because we only have half an hour, but I've been studying psychology of leadership. I've been studying psychology of success and psychology of achievement. And what I've learned, I think the culminating thing for me, and I hope for others, is that you can, if no matter what walk of life you come from, you can become anything you want to. You have to put in the effort to change your mindset and learn what other successful people have done in the past and use their ideas. You don't have to reinvent things. You can use what they've done and create a template for how to live in the world. And in fact, I've got a couple of books that I wrote. I've got a book called Reinventing Yourself that I wrote. It's about 400 pages, a little bit too long, but it's the psychology of understanding how your mind works and how to change your mindset and how to get past the past. And that's what it's called, Reinventing Yourself, how to get past the past. Because sometimes our past is an anchor because we've picked up beliefs that don't work, and we've accepted, you've probably heard this term, self-limiting beliefs that hold us back, where we hesitate, where we may not think we're good enough or can't be successful, and overcoming those and rewriting our script and how we think internally, but also more importantly, how we also act towards others. And I think that's a critical aspect. Are we helping people up, or are we tearing them down to make us feel better and more secure, and limit other people? If you can, and this is where leadership comes in, the more I find that we help others or teach others or act as a model, the better we become for ourselves. Not that we're aiming, and this is the critical aspect that I learned later, not that you have to become better, but you become better by helping others. I think that's probably one of the critical things, that if I had to weave a specific thread through all this conversation, this is critical for me. Helping others.
No, I think like, just to get back on like trading psychology, the way I used it, I became successful out of it is I started paying attention to the people that would run in the company and try to see how they're thinking and why they made the decisions they made. But the thing is, I never really understood like what makes a natural born good leader.
Mm, mm.
That's
Well,
always been a thing, because a lot of people, as you see, and not to get into politics, everybody, those people, I feel like a lot of people in politics, they just want to lead. They just want to have power, and they just want to be on top of the mountain. But are they good leaders? And as you see throughout history in the past, some people get chosen by the people to be leaders. And how does that happen versus what we have nowadays, where everybody's just, oh no, I think I can just do better. And it's kind of more of an ego thing.
yes. Well, that ties back into, are we helping other people become better? And are we becoming a role model or a model of exemplary behavior? I'm going to come back to a key word that you said. And this is the idea of there are born leaders. I've studied this aspect, and people might come up with in different families, but there's no gene to be a leader. You may have specific attributes that you picked up younger in childhood that were perhaps that you modeled after your parents or somebody, an authority figure of some kind, and you picked up certain attributes and characteristics. But just like nobody's born an accountant, nobody's born a leader. So what that means is that we all have this opportunity to invent ourselves. And there's a gentleman by the name of Dr. Warren Bennis, who's the one of the foremost, or he passed away, but was one of the foremost authors and researchers on leadership. And he talks about being born versus creating yourself and inventing yourself. And he wrote a book called On Becoming a Leader. When it first came out, it became a bestseller because it shows you, and it's not a difficult book to read. It's only like 150, 160 pages long, about how to create, how other leaders created themselves, invented themselves, and reinvented themselves, and where they came from and what they had to do. It doesn't go too deeply into the psychology of it because people don't want to read 500, 600 pages, but it's a great book. Later in life, he got a little political. So if anybody buys this book, I would recommend skipping the first like 25 pages, because he got political, and just get to the meat of the book and not worry about whether he's Democrat, Republican, or whatever, because I think that just divides us some more as well.
With the access to like social media, and everybody has an opinion and everybody has following nowadays, it seems like everybody's a leader of something. You know what I mean? I have this thought where people are, they get a few 50, 60, 80,000 followers, and their opinion has weight to it. And some people that follows them, they take those opinions seriously and they run with it, and it becomes a headline with no substance really truly behind it. How is that affecting the new wave of leadership?
I think it's a great question. And so I'm going to answer it probably in a way you're not expecting me to. If we're taking other people's opinions and making them our own, You've got to ask yourself what's missing inside, that you've got to look outside to other people's opinions. The best opinions that I've come across are, again, those that I've learned to live from a different aspect. I will go to social media to see what's going on, but then I have to dive around, dig around to find out, is this an opinion, or am I being biased in it because it aligns to something I believe in? Do you understand what I'm saying? We tend to gravitate towards things that we've been taught before and things that we believe in. And we also pick up bad opinions that are false. And that's the other thing that I've learned with social media. People will say things very quickly, or they'll take a snippet of something and they'll form an opinion based upon somebody's snippet, but then you come back and you look at what somebody actually said, and you look around the snippet and you go, well, that, when you take it in context of what that person is saying, it's not true. And I just caution people to, when you're following people, you got to ask yourself, I think, maybe one or two questions. Is this person aiming people up, or are they aiming people down? Are they trying to create a name for themselves, or are they really trying to help others become better? And I understand social media, our attention deficit disorder, or our attention is so small that if people don't get right to the point in 3 seconds, we lose them. We're lost. And my warning to everybody is, dive deeper into ideas and people who have done the research, that understand how the brain works and how society is either going in one direction or another, and make sure that you do stand firm on principles. And I think that's the critical aspect. What are your own principles? And do you know what your principles are? And are you living through the code of conduct of your principles every day? And even if you're not, if you try to live through a code of conduct of principles, you won't be blown around by the opinions of others. You will live firmly through the principles that you've decided to live on or live upon. And I think that is a critical aspect that I've learned in leadership. Leadership to me, and I've defined leadership this way, and you can Google leadership and you'll come up with over 30,000 different definitions. But leadership to me is a way of acting that inspires others to be their best selves on the way to an objective. And I'll say it again. Leadership is a way of acting or behaving that inspires others to be their best selves on the way toward an objective. It doesn't say that you have to be a manager. It doesn't say you have to be crowned. It means all of us can develop leadership attributes and aspects to model behavior for others, so that others are inspired by the way we act.
Now, like, I see you, like, I want to talk about like principle, discipline, all that affecting leadership. I also want to bring in like one thing, like how somebody grows up. As you look throughout history, there's so many effective leaders, good or bad. But when you look at their history, there is like pinpoints in their history and their background that made them effective leaders. Like things that were probably out of their norm, or not out of their norm, but like maybe bad things that happen, or maybe they met somebody that is, by accident end up being their mentor, or having to do a unseen project, or starting a business to save their family's life or feed their family, and they end up getting thrown into this leadership role. That's all. That being said, is that easily somebody become good or bad on changing people's lives. I think Hitler was probably a great example of that. bad situations happened to him. Hatred became in his heart, and he became a leader. And I don't know if his history, if that's what he wanted when he started out, to become a face, a leader of a military or a country, whatever the case may be. Is that my thing? Is that how those stuff like happen? How do you become that good of a speaker, that good of a, I guess, somebody who acts upon it, where a lot of people follow you? There got to be something that you're doing that is tugging at somebody's heart, or tugging at somebody's, like they're missing something. Because if a leader can fill that role, people will follow you.
And there's a lot of things you said there, and I think they're important. I prefer to use more positive examples, such as John F. Kennedy or Martin Luther King. And if you look at what they did in the past, and I'm trying to leave out any kind of contemporary leaders because this can get very divisive. But if you look backwards at these two people, they inspired people, but they aimed, again, I use this term, aim people up, not down. Aim people up. Where are we going? Where are you taking? So they had a vision of the future and what could possibly be, but it was a positive vision of where they wanted to take people, or where they believed we could go as together as a group of people, not leave anybody behind, but where we can go in unity. And everybody fits in, no matter where the background is, what color they are, what language they speak, no matter what their religion is. But where can we go together? And that would be positive for everyone. Now, I want to come back to something else you said. The turning point where I studied, because I came from an impoverished background. I grew up with no father. There was never enough food on the table. And I started working at an early age, and the money went to feed, whatever we could have. I thought we had a good life growing up. I'm the oldest of 5, and I thought, hey, this is great. Every night we can have pancakes and syrup, until one day we ran out of syrup, and I realized, okay, maybe this isn't the norm, because I went over to somebody else's house and they had steak, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. There's a turning point in people's lives where people realize that this is it. There's no net. You're walking across the high wire, and if you fall, and if you don't come from an impoverished background and you have a net, good for you. There was no net for me. If I failed, there was no place else to go. But I started off at the bottom, so it was close edge to the ground. So me getting through college, that was my goal. But part of that was I knew I had to get a job. And the way the world worked, I was very fortunate. I was fortunate to get the job that I wanted, but I also knew it was a numbers game, and I had to learn how to interview. The thing that I learned that psychologists talk about, where people turn their lives around, it's called an SEE. It's called a significant emotional event. Now, listening to you, Kenny, and your background just for a second, I can make some assumptions. You probably had certain significant emotional events, maybe many of them. And you realize that, you know what, if it's going to change, and you probably heard this expression, if it's to be, it's up to me. Nobody was coming to the rescue. I wanted people to rescue. And my biggest thing was, I thought other people were holding me back. And I've taught this to others. When I realized nobody's holding me back. This is a belief that I picked up. And that if I don't try to change my life now, then who knows, maybe I'll never change it. And I ran across, one of the significant emotional events in my life was my boss leaving. He said, I'm quitting. It was the midst of a big recession. He said, you take over the office. I was totally unprepared. I was 28 at the time. Had to be in charge of 80 people. People who were 45, I thought were just much older than me. I thought they were ancient. And I also thought that they had a lot of wisdom. And when I had the responsibility for 80 people, I went to the library and said, there's got to be some answers here, because I got to save the business that we were in. And I ran across a guy by the name of Brian Tracy. and it was a video. And one of the things he said on this video, he gave a lot of different ideas. A couple of things he said: you become what you think about most of the time. Rich people think success. Poor people think poverty. One of the instructions that he gave on that video, he said, read an hour a day in your field every day and take notes. That one idea, and I've got a video on LinkedIn about that. It's got like 400 hits on it, 400 likes, in like 90 different comments. And I've told people to follow this idea. And if you just read 1 hour a day, every single day, it'll change your life. Now, I was so excited about it because I started to experience things right away. My whole demeanor, the feelings I had, my experience, the way I saw the world started changing. So I started reading 2 hours a day. And I've been doing that for the past 30 years. I picked up so much knowledge and so many different ideas. I've got notebooks full of books that I've read. And this is why I've written 5 different books. I now teach something called the Leadership Academy, and I do this with major corporations. And these are 90-minute, what I call 90-minute sprints, where we discuss, I facilitate a topic, I show videos of different thought leaders, and they're short clips of like 3 to 5 minutes long. And then we discuss what that thought leader's saying. And the people that I have on those classes, are anywhere from I guess in their or starting off 19, 20 years old, all the way up into their 60s. So I have multiple generations in these classes, and it becomes a great discussion. And what we find, and they're from all different walks of life, what we find is we all are more common than we are different. We all have fears and worries and concerns, and we want to be accepted and we want to be successful. But some of us, and I had to learn this, that you can learn how to be successful and you can develop yourself to become successful. And what happens is you start attracting people into your life, you vibrate differently, which is a whole nother discussion. You vibrate differently. Your energy is different. Your approach to life and discussions with people are different. It's up, not down. And again, you're attracting a different type of people. You have an aura, an energy around you that makes it more exciting. And you leap out of bed instead of going, oh my gosh, I got to hit the snooze button. And you can hardly wait to start each day. You mentioned the word discipline, and doing these things like that, reading every morning, every single morning, started off with a little bit of discipline, but now it's become a success habit. If I don't get up early and read for an hour, at least an hour a day, I don't vibrate the right way. I don't feel good, just like exercise. So I don't know if that helps people, your audience, but if I want to give anything, you can become anything you want to be by putting in the efforts. It's different than athletics and sports. You have to have certain athletic attributes.
Yeah.
But learning things and changing your mind and becoming and just educating yourself is just it's not an easy thing to do. It just takes time and discipline.
I feel like it's like this one quote with everything you said. Your level of success will suddenly exceed your level of personal development.
Oh, I like that quote. I've never heard that one before. That's a great one.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that they're just going to get successful. Even if you do find a success, your character won't keep you there.
Your character won't keep you there. Tell me more about what you mean by that one, because I agree 100%.
What I mean by that is, like, you'll see some people, their talents will get them to a certain platform, but the lack of discipline, the lack of will, and just not getting up every day and, like you said, researching your own field, reading about your field for 1 hour a day, getting up and exercising, or getting up and trying to be better in the niche or in the field that you're in. So your characteristics are not the person that your talent needs you to be. Because sometimes your talent takes you places that your personality and your characteristics and your discipline can't keep you, because you have none.
Agreed.
It's like winning the lottery. You have no
Ex
discipline to manage your money.
That's exactly right.
There's one thing that we learn is be aggressive when you're making money, and be aggressively offense when you're making money, and be aggressive defense when you're keeping your money. When you're trying to make money, you got to be aggressive. And when you're trying to keep it, keeping money is harder than making money, because keeping money, everybody's trying to take it from you. At that, you get to a point where you get successful, people are legitimately trying to take your assets, trying to take it from you, because it's a lot easier to take something from somebody than actually to make it. So you spend a lot of time defending yourself. That's why you see a lot of successful people get sued.
Yes.
You know what I
The
mean?
and there's a saying, and I'm going to get it wrong, but it says it's difficult to make money, but it's easy to lose money. It's like pouring water on the sand, and this is something that I also learned is money attracts money. Do you agree with that, Kenny? Money attracts money.
Oh, 100%. Money attracts money.
And this is one of the
100%.
things that I tell people in my leadership academy. We get into finances because they're people who grew up like me and you. They were impoverished and they don't have a success mindset. I tell it, I said, put 10% of your money away if you can. Save money. Do not go. You don't need to go out to dinner. You don't need to go treat. You don't need to go on these expensive vacations. Where I've been successful was my company. I started becoming so pretty good at speaking and by the way, I used to stutter as a kid, and so I had to get rid of that, and I had to learn how to speak. So they sent me on trips to go speak in front of audience, and I could actually use that time. The company's trip send me on a trip to go to different places and spend 3 or 4 days somewhere else. So I learned also how to save money. And when you have money in your account, all of a sudden money starts accumulating. And I've watched the stock market. And I'm an investor in the stock market. If you don't know where to invest, mutual funds are a great place. Low
Funds is a great place. Great place to
Yes.
start.
And it just tracks, and you just got to leave it in there, and it just tracks. And all of a sudden, 20 years later, you get this, a million years old. You look back, you go, how did I get all this money?
Yeah.
And it gives you that firm foundation, that feeling of comfort. Being where you've used to work, one of the premier firms in New York City, this because you had to deal with high net worth individuals. And a lot of them have that same mindset, and they think differently. They think differently in many different ways, but they're also very meticulous, not only with how they spend their money and what they spend it on, but they're also meticulous in terms of where they put their money into investments. There are no get rich quick schemes. Okay.
Nope.
Okay. You will lose your money. And I still talk to people who are in their 60s and they're still investing in these. I'm saying, why do you do that? You've got scars from this. So in me coaching people, I explain, why do you do this? But it's usually a psychological need or this idea that money can be made quickly. I'm looking at the time, and I know we've got about 2 minutes.
No, we're good. One thing I wanted to elaborate on that. There's like this get rich quick scheme. Wealth is formed from get rich quick scheme, quickly disappears. Wealth from hard work grows over time. I think we live in a society where everything is like right away.
We
Everybody
want it
wants
now,
it.
and now is not even fast enough.
Yeah, and now, true. Now it's not even fast enough. Instant gratification. But like I wanted to really say like on something else you kind of touched on is that I think when you said you had the stuttering issue, that's one of those things I said like that made you a good speaker, a good leader, because I think that you had to like overcome that fear. Like I looked up people that stutter. About 70% of them don't ever overcome that fear. Matter of fact, they end up getting jobs where they don't have to speak. They end up doing things where they don't have to speak too much, and then they lower their self-value. That's kind of what I'm saying. It's like, Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy, all those people that done wonderful things. It's like if you look in their background, they had something that was like a complete mountain they had to kind of get over to get past it. And that along the way of climbing that mountain end up building those leadership qualities.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then people see that. People are attracted to people that went through hardships.
Yeah. And Kenny,
Even if they realize it or
you'll
not.
agree to, yes, I think you'll agree to this. And because they've gone through hardships, I think they can empathize with others. They can see through others' eyes and understand how other people feel. They have patience. Sometimes they don't have patience because they're human. And other times they look at others and they go, there's me. That's me 20 years ago. Or that person's going through hardship and that person's lashing out. And maybe I need to step back and instead of lashing in return, try to understand why they're lashing out or what I can do to help them. Because maybe they don't understand, maybe they're going through a tough time at home. I gave this example the other day on a Leadership Academy call. We had a woman who was great. It was a call center, and I had to turn this project around. And I came into the call center, and this one woman was starting to come in late, and the supervisor of the call center said, we need to fire her. She's coming in late. I said, why don't you find out why she's coming in late? And she did. She found out that her mother had passed away, and that was her outlet for child watching her children. And I said, why don't we find out how long it takes her? We'll take her to find someone else to find a caregiver, somebody for the children. And then the supervisor said, it's going to just take too long and it's not fair to the other people. And I said, let's do this. Let's bring all the other call center people into the office and we'll ask them what they want to do. And we talked about this woman who said this person lost her mother, and that was her children's carekeeper. She needs to go find another carekeeper. She's coming in half an hour late. Can we pick up the slack until she finds somebody? And I said, we won't do it unless everybody agrees unanimously that we're going to pick up the slack. You all are going to have to pick up the slack for the half hour. But I will say this, if we decide to do it, we're going to do the same thing for everybody to make it fair. So that if something ever happens to you, you know that we've got your back and everybody will pick up the slack. And what happened was everybody agreed unanimously to say, however long she needs to go find a caregiver for her children. And they all agreed. They picked up the work. Now, what happened is everybody started working harder and smarter. People started actually laughing more, having more fun. And the woman found a caregiver and she came into the office. But the whole team turned around because they knew just through that one act, and not because I was trying to make an act, but what's the right thing to do? And of course, I'm sure I broke HR rules, but it was the right thing to do to help this person instead of firing them. That doesn't help anybody. Does that make sense?
No, that makes sense. It makes me think of something Nick Saban said over the weekend or a couple weekends ago. He said in 1998, before 1998, he was a transactional coach, a transactional leader, and all he cared about was winning and losing. And he realized like he was about to get fired, and he said something got to change. And he said he did some research and he changed his style, became a transformative coach, and stopped caring about winning and losing. And then he started to win.
Yes. There it is right there. Say that again for your audience, because this is critical. This is exactly what I found.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are so worried about what bad consequences if they don't make profit, or we got to find somebody else to replace that person if they come in 30 minutes late, or somebody slacking. But that taking 1 or 2 days or 3 days to figure out what's going on with somebody might end up changing the entire team, entire company, and productivity, performance might rise up to a level that is unseen. Because once you stop being transactional and you stop thinking in a transactional way, you stop limiting yourself.
That's so wise. And this is for your audience. What Kenny just said is something that I learned, and I'm coaching others. If you do all the right things, you may not see progress, but you are making progress. If you're trying to win every single time and you're not helping others win, you're going to lose because people are not going to trust you. It's a win-win game. And if you're making deals that are all about you, and you've got the spotlight on you, and this is about leadership too. If you've got the spotlight on you and not the spotlight on others, you're not a good leader. If you're only cared about your own success and how you look, I would advise you to not worry about how you look, because that's really a fear. It's a fear that you want to be accepted and loved by others, and you're actually you're trying to replace a giant-sized hole in you, and that hole is in your heart. If you can live by certain principles and recognize that if you can develop your inner side, the outer side will take care of itself. If you become really good in your field, the money will follow. If your aim is to make more money without developing yourself, and you said this earlier, Kenny, that character, that lack of character, the lack of discipline, the lack of being honest and having integrity and helping others, it'll come across you may experience some success, but you cannot hold on to that success very long, because successful people all rise up, and there might be a couple aberrations where people have become successful, but they have a track record of success, and it's usually a long-term track record of success. This is a critical aspect for everyone to notice, but remember, success comes from the inside, and it's transformational. Nick Saban, one of the greatest football coaches ever, and he's got leadership qualities. He knows when to lead and when to allow others to lead. And he's a great coach because he knows how to develop other leaders on a team. And leadership isn't just about one person. You want to create leaders across the whole spectrum of your team. Because remember, leadership is a behavior. It's not an innate attribute, and it's not a title.
Joe, I really appreciate your time, man. I actually tremendously learned a lot. Definitely changed the wiring of my brain on how I think about like leadership and how leaders actually think. A lot of time I thought leadership was more of a thing that kind of like born inside you, but you kind of, as this conversation went on, you kind of have to build those skills through your experiences, and then you kind of have to learn and build a template from others.
Wow, you picked up a lot of great words. Yeah, I said all those things.
Yeah, so like I think this is for me and for people that's gonna be listening, people that's gonna be viewing this. I think like on an everyday life, even if you're just a man with a family,
Yes.
you still need those. You still need
Yes.
those leadership qualities, because everybody in your family is gonna have different characteristics. Everybody's gonna have different personalities, and you have to be able to navigate that.
Kenny, when I do the Leadership Academy, the most rewarding thing that I get are the surveys, because it's not the score where everybody says I did a great job. I ask a question: what one or two things did you learn in today's session? They actually write. I have 150 people, usually anywhere from 75 to 150 people in my class. And I want to come back to this in a second, but I do these for corporations. And they write what they learned in the class and what they're going to implement. The third, fourth question that I ask is, how has this changed your life, these sessions? And they talk about how these leadership lessons, the Leadership Academy has not only impacted their lives at work, but how they run their families at home, or how they work with their children at home. I had one gentleman, he was a father of two boys, and I don't know what happened to his wife or the mother of the two boys, but he said, I've been raising my two boys wrong. And we did a session on the growth mindset and what a growth mindset is. And it's based upon a book. a best-selling book. And he said, after that session, I realized I was raising my two boys wrong. I can hardly wait to go home and start using the tools that I learned in this session. And that one just brought tears to my eyes, because, you know, when you have that kind of an impact on people, the reward of seeing others, or at least giving others the opportunity to walk through a door or see that there is a door, a different door that they can go through, is life altering for me. And that's what I live for. The money that I get, which is good money for these sessions for corporations, is one thing, but the real satisfaction I get is from that leadership, the Leadership Academy surveys, and listening to what happens to others transform. I'm going to use your word, because leadership is transformational, and I recommend to everybody studying it. And just the last note, Kenny, and this is something that maybe it's two notes. One, I'll probably do some more free public forums for Leadership Academy things, just to give back, because that's one of your questions. What are the things that you do for society and give back? I've done a few of these before where I've had 120 people on these calls. I've done 2 of them, and I probably need to do some more before the end of the year. So maybe I'll reach out to you and talk to you about that. And then the last one is,
Definitely.
you would enjoy an author by the name of Dr. Ari Kiev. Do you know that name?
No, I don't.
Kiev. He was a psychiatrist on Wall Street, and he got picked up by one of the hedge fund organizations. And if you've ever watched the show Billions, is it Billions?
Yeah, Billions.
You remember the woman who's a psychiatrist on that show?
Yeah.
She's modeled after him.
Wow.
He joined a hedge fund, and he talked to traders all the time on the psychology. And he also wrote some books. He writes about, it's really about leadership, but it's also psychology on achievement. And because we all have these deep-rooted fears, and these people are making 6 figures, 7 figures a year easily. And, you know, just reading those books to understand his psychology is something that I picked up, I guess, about 10 years ago, because he gets to another level of psychology. And so it's something that I think maybe you personally would enjoy, and frankly, any one of your listeners. So I've enjoyed talking with you. You've obviously are a mastermind at these things. So
down, man, I really appreciate. Thank you so much, man. I really enjoy it. I made it a point when I come on here to really try to come as a student. And hopefully we can learn together. Definitely learning how you think differently about leadership and how you think differently about success. Because that made you successful.
Yes.
And you in your own right. And I always believe there's a million ways to be successful, just like there's a million ways to make $1 million.
Yes.
And I think everybody, once they figure out their road, your goal is to pave that road as nice and neat, as smooth as possible. Because that's your road, that's your playground, and that's your area, and that's your street. And your goal is to build it brick by brick, lay a cement, lay the lines, lay the barriers, and you know what I mean? This is where you don't go, this is where you go. I think success is like that. And you have to build it brick by brick, cement, dotted lines. And it's a long road. It doesn't end, and it's challenge every time. And when you go down that road, there'll be potholes.
Yes.
And sometimes you have to go back and relearn some things.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
There's a great quote that I like. It's called, "Obstacles don't come to obstruct, they come to instruct." And so if you can remember that, and if you develop success habits, just like you pick up negative habits, life becomes easier when you pick up success habits. And it's not necessarily, it's a discipline, but it's not difficult. Discipline sounds hard. If you make success habits and you don't think about these anymore, your wiring in your head changes, and it just becomes natural, like breathing in and breathing out. So
I really appreciate you coming on the
I
show,
appreciate
man.
you too. Best to you, my friend.
Phenomenal talk. Phenomenal talk. And
I think we'd have a lot more to talk about in the future sometime. So anytime I can help you be successful, I'm here for you. Don't forget that.
Thank you for coming on the show, Marathon Money, and I appreciate everybody listening.